Arizona State Sun Devils football training camp is open, and we need to talk about the biggest storylines to monitor on this edition of the Locked On Sun Devils podcast.
You are Locked On Sun Devils, your daily podcast on the Arizona State Sun Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to the Locked On Sun Devils podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. My name is Richie Bradshaw, and I will be your guide for everything Arizona State Sun Devils. Thank you all for tuning in, and thank you especially to my everydayers that are here every day. Remember, wherever you're getting your podcast, to hit like and subscribe and turn on those notifications so you get an update whenever we post new content. Stay in touch with that content by following me on Twitter or X, I suppose, at Richie Brads 36 and the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Real quick, I just want to let you guys know that I will be helping with practice coverage with Devil's Digest. So if you guys are looking for some day-by-day coverage and breakdowns of specific players, I will be one of the guys contributing. So make sure that you guys are following Devil's Digest as well and stay in touch with the content that way. All right. There is a lot of storylines to be monitoring for Arizona State during a training camp that is going to be very, very eventful. The next 4 weeks or so, it's going to be a little less than a month before Arizona State Sun Devils kick off. Well, it might be exactly a month now that I think about it, because they kick off. Yeah. So by the time you guys are listening to this episode, it will be exactly a month until kickoff for the season against Southern Utah. But there's so many things that we're going to be wondering in the meantime, whether it's the quarterback battle, which we'll talk about here in just a moment, or it's the guys that are surrounding the quarterbacks, or it's the defense, or it's the coaches. Like, there's so many storylines, and we're here to jam pack all of them in one episode and briefly cover all of them. If you guys are on YouTube, you can see on the right-hand side of my screen that I have my top training camp storylines. I only have 3 listed, nice and broad, so that we can get into them more. Before we get started, I do want to mention that the quarterbacks are obviously going to be a large focus of the training camp. So is the new coaching staff with Kenny Dillingham and Bo Baldwin and Brian Ward and Charlie Raggle and everybody else on the staff. That is a big storyline in itself. But taking a look at the quarterbacks first, because I know that's where everybody wants to focus their attention on before we even get into the meat and potatoes of this podcast. We got to start with the ham, start with the turkey, whatever it is that you're serving up on Thanksgiving. The quarterback battle, what's going on here? It feels like this is going to be a 3-man race. I have said not to sleep on Jacob Conover. I will continue to say don't sleep on Jacob Conover. But at the end of the day, this definitely feels like a 3-man race for who the starting quarterback is going to be. It's between Drew Pyne, Trenton Bourguet, and Jaden Rashada. It feels like those are definitively the correct options to go with, because each of them brings a unique facet to the offense. Like with Trenton Bourguet, he's got the passion of being a Sun Devil for 5 years, and he's a guy who has worked his way into a starting role. He proved last year that he deserves that opportunity. At this point, he's a fan favorite, and if you don't like Trenton Bourguet, then I don't like you. I'll just go ahead and put that out there. So Trenton Bourguet brings that side of it. And then you have Drew Pyne. And Pyne is that transfer from Notre Dame who was able to have some success last year with the Irish. He helped turn their season around when they started off 0-2 under Tyler Buckner. They had reinvigorated themselves when Drew Pyne took over. And he was a very quality quarterback. Like, they were winning with him, not necessarily because of him, but he still did a very good job managing and running the offense. Makes sense that he would be someone that Kenny Dillingham was very interested in. At the time of his transferring to Arizona State, this felt like the guy that you were going to put in a really, really thick pencil, not pen, that he would have been the starter. And then, of course, Jaden Rashada, the highly regarded 4-star prospect coming in from Pittsburgh, California. Again, a 4-star kid, big kid. He's over 6'3". I would assume he's 6'3". He might be 6'4" in college. Close to 200 pounds, a little lighter than that. A cannon for an arm, the ability to run. Like, He reminds me a lot of Jaden Daniels getting to Arizona State. So we'll see what the future holds there. But the bottom line is by the end of training camp, we're going to know who the starting quarterback is. This is an inevitable arrival that we're going to have. Kenny Dillingham has said that he doesn't want this to go down to the wire. It's not going to be one of those situations where we don't really know who the starter is until the week of. I think that Coach Dillingham is going to want to have his established starter probably a week, maybe even a week and a half or 2 weeks before the start of the season, so that we can really start to establish a amount of chemistry between who the starting quarterback is and the players that they're going to be surrounded with, throwing the ball, running the ball, and protecting the quarterback. They're going to want to have that figured out. So obviously, this is just the biggest storyline for Sun Devils football this year. And it's going to be a lot of fun to watch. I am so excited to see how this is all going to shake out, because you just have so many different options to go with here that all bring their own facets to the team. Like, it's not like one of those where it's like you have Joe Schmo and Mo Joe or whatever, and they're like the same dude. Like, these guys bring separate, individualized elements to this offense. And because of that, you sit there and you just get so excited about the potential of them being able to really have their own niche with the offense. And like, they feel like they could all be very good in their own ways. It feels like Drew Pyne could be the very safe quarterback that takes care of the football and is able to sustain drives for Arizona State. It feels like Jaden Rashada is the exciting freshman, and it's like you don't know what it is. He's the big present on Christmas that you can't wait to open and find out what's in it. Trenton Bourguet, he's got a good arm. Like, he's got the athleticism, he's got the moxie and the personality to be the silent killer. He's classic Harry Truman, not Harry Truman, Theodore Roosevelt, speak softly and carry a large stick. That's just the way Trenton Bourguet goes. So they all have their own intriguing kind of personalities for this offense that they would bring. And whoever ends up being the starter is going to define the way that this offense looks. I truly believe that. And there's a ton of weapons for them to be able to work with, which is obviously going to really go in their favor when push comes to shove. But the bottom line is, at the end of the day, this is definitely the biggest storyline. It's the one people care about the most, and it's the one that's going to get the most coverage. If you're looking for good coverage, then you need to go to eBay Motors. For a championship team, it's all about making sure every player is a perfect fit. It's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. So the next time you need parts and accessories, head to eBay Motors. Put your vehicle in your garage and look for the green check to see if every part will fit or your money back. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, you can be sure that every part will fit correctly the first time around. Because just like in sports, confidence is the name of the game when you shop on eBay Motors. And with over 122 million parts to choose from, you'll be back in the game in no time. After all, it's easy to bring home a win with the right parts guaranteed. Get the right parts, the right fit, and the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Let's ride. eBay Guaranteed Fit, only available to U.S. customers. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Wherever you're getting your podcast, hit like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. We're going to be doing non-stop practice coverage for Sun Devils. I'll be reporting to you guys pretty much every day about what I saw in camp. We'll be covering it on Devils Digest as well, so make sure that you guys are tuned in and locked in. All right, more storylines for the offense. I've got listed here, how does the offense function? There's very many components here that we have to talk about, and we're going to break it up bit by bit. So let's start with the offensive line. How's it going to look? Well, Isaiah Glass definitely feels like the easiest guy to slot in as the left tackle, as the entrenched veteran, and the blindside protector and the captain of the offensive line. It's going to be Isaiah Glass. I'm really rooting for him to take that next step forward. You have other guys as well that are returning, Joey Ramos and Ben Bray, who have had their opportunities. Ramos, of course, was injured last year, and we were shorted him for basically the entire year. Ben Bray was able to come in for relief of Ladarius Henderson at times, and he also looked very, very quality. So these are two guys that I feel should be able to get very good snaps and reps to be able to get themselves onto the football field. But you have so many transfers coming in. Bram Walden, Max Ionacre, Sean Naa as a true freshman, Kyle Scott, Aaron Frost, Lee Fontanu, Sion Finau. Like there is no shortage of offensive linemen here. And when we were talking to Bo Baldwin last week, he had mentioned that he feels that this offensive line is too deep, and he feels that he really doesn't feel like he has to roll out necessarily the quote unquote best 5 offensive linemen, and that they have the depth at each position to make sure that guys are comfortable and know what they're doing and provide quality play. Who are those guys going to be, though? Again, Isaiah Glass feels like a lock for left tackle. Every other spot should be up for competition. Lee Fontanu and Ben Bray should be battling out at center. At guard, Finau, Ramos, Kyle Scott, Cade Briggs, Ionacre, Nah. Like there's plenty of competition there as well. What's going on at right tackle? Should be Aaron Frost, but it could be Bram Walden. It could be Emmett Boley. There's so much that's going on at this program right now on the offensive line that this is going to be perhaps the most important camp positional battle to watch, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who your quarterback is if you can't keep them upstanding. And Arizona State is going to need to field the best possible outcome here for the offensive line. I hope that Bo Baldwin is correct when he says that he feels they're too deep. Next up, let's talk running backs. Look, it's all about Cameron Scatabo. That is definitely the player to watch for this offense. He is going to be looking to be the next X Validate, the next Rashad White, the next Eno Benjamin, as that transfer running back who runs the offense literally and ends up being the main focal point of it all. He's going to be at the centerfold of everything. He can catch the football. But my question is, how are those reps going to be dealt about? Because even with Scatabo being probably the main guy, you've got other intriguing options. You got Javen Jacobs, who's my dude, and he can catch the football very well. And he should, according to Sean Aguano, he will be getting some plays designed up just for him and some opportunities to be a pass catcher out of the backfield. You've got the Carlos Brooks, who's coming in from Cal. He's another interesting guy. Tevin White, a highly regarded 4-star kid who Sean Aguano said is the most talented running back in the room. You've got you've got a lot of intrigue here at the running back position, and so many different options, avenues, talents, personalities, and overall play styles that you can run through, very literally. So that'll be interesting to see. Again, I think Cameron Scatabo is definitely the number 1 back. I don't know that anyone can really usurp him at this point in time, but it will be interesting to see how those snaps are divvied up, because Arizona State has liked to use multiple backs, even if they do have a featured guy. So how Scatabo will fit into the offense and how the guys behind him will fit in will be something to pay attention to. Tight end is another position that I'm going to be watching, not so much because I have questions, but because I want to know how guys are going to be involved. Jalen Conyers is going to be the best tight end in the Pac-12. You can put that down, put it in pen, put it in your blog, screenshot the podcast, I guess. You can screen record. There you go. Screen record. Jalen Conyers is going to be the best tight end in the Pac-12 this year. But beyond him, there's depth. There's Messiah Swinson and Bryce Pierre, 2 guys that I'm really excited to see. And I'm so curious about how they're going to fit into the offense and how Arizona State is going to incorporate multiple tight ends. Is it really just going to be the Jalen Conyers show, or it will be the Jalen Conyers show featuring Messiah Swinson and Bryce Pierre? Like, how are you going to incorporate 3 incredibly talented tight ends who just bring you so many different matchup advantages with their size and their speed and their strength? Like, they could, any of these tight ends here could be a starter week 1 for the Sun Devils, and you'd feel good about it. It just so happens that Jalen Conyers is a superstar waiting to happen. But if he wasn't, you could start Messiah Swinson. You'd be good with it because he's talented. Same with Bryce Pierre. Like, there's just an abundance of riches here at the tight end position. I'm curious how they get all of that sorted out for the season. But, speaking of an abundance of talent, wide receiver, man. Elijah Badger is number one. To me, there's no disputing that. What happens after him? Xavier Guillory is one of my guys. Giovanni Sanders, friend of the podcast, is one of those guys that I like as well. I'm a very big Jordan Tyson guy. Troy Omer, very interesting. Andre Johnson is the redshirt senior. Melcon Staval transferred to the program as a graduate senior. He didn't come to this program to just be a backup. He's here at this program with an opportunity to get some significant playing time. Jake Smith is here. Caleb Black and Corbin Hendricks are the freshmen that are coming in. There's just a ridiculous amount of options at the wide receiver spot. And I'm so interested to see when camp ends, how it ends up looking. Badger should be the X, but who's the Y? Who's the Z, right? Who's the guy across from him? Who are they lining up inside? What's the depth chart look like from 1 to 10? That's one of the most intriguing camp battles for me. And one of the ones where I'm not necessarily worried about how it ends up, because this could go in a way where it's like Badger, Guillory, Sanders, which is probably what most of us are guessing, but this could also be Badger, Andre Johnson, Melcon Staval. This could be Badger, Omer, Jordan Tyson. This could be Jake Smith and Badger and Giovanni Sanders. Like, there's so many different combinations that you can put together, but feel really good about it. That's probably the storyline that, outside of quarterback, is the most exciting for Arizona State, is looking at all of these weapons on the offensive side of the football and wondering how you can mix and match and place these guys in situations to get the most out of them and generate this explosive offense that Arizona State has that capability of reaching. But it's all going to depend on all these storylines and how they're going to benefit the quarterback. Thank you one more time for tuning in, guys. Make sure you hit like and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, because we're going to be keeping you up to date with everything going on with Sun Devils practices. I will be there virtually every single day, providing you content both here and for Devils Digest. So make sure that you stay in touch with me on Twitter at RichieBrats36 so that you know everything that's going on with the Sun Devils all the time. Defensively, this is just a very blanket statement. I got a brand new defense with few loyalties. Here's what I mean by that. This is a new defensive coordinator. This is a new staff. There is a lot of transfers coming in. There are a plethora of freshmen that are coming in. This is a team that cannot afford to have loyalty to players because they need to have instant production. So they can't afford to just give the seniors and the returning guys from last year starting time because they were here a year ago. This is a team that needs to field its best 11. And in a defense that's going to be featured as a 4-2-5, right? Yes, as a 4-2-5 defense. They're going to be looking for quality linebacker play, a good pass rush, and a secondary that can hold up. You've got tons of guys here. Some of them better than others. Some of them that are returning guys, some that are transfers, some that are freshmen. There is no shortage of competition at all three levels of the defense. Taking a look at defensive line first, I think we're really set at the edge rushing spot with BJ Green being a very flexible piece. I like that he can be a little bit all over the place for you, and he can be a very flexible player, whether he's on the edge or he kicks in the defensive tackle. And they might need some help at defensive tackle because there's not a ton of depth there. They've already moved Anthony Cooper inside. Deshaun Mallory is coming in. Everyone knows I'm a big CJ Fight guy. And from there, it's a lot of unproven guys. Sam Benjamin, Tristan Monday are redshirt freshman transfers. There's a lot of youth there, but there's not a lot of proven talent. So I expect BJ Green to get a lot of work inside. I expect Anthony Cooper and Deshaun Mallory to get a lot of play time because they're veterans, but don't be surprised if CJ Fight usurps them because he's looked outstanding so far in what we've seen from him. Edge rushers, there's a ton of them. Clayton Smith is my dude. Prince Dorbaugh, Michael Matus is becoming one of the most vocal leaders in that locker room. It feels like he's going to continue to have that kind of an impact for the team. Garen Stansbury is also there. They got a ton of freshmen. Ashley Williams, Landon Thompson. There's just Landon Thomas, excuse me, not Thompson. There is so many different avenues you can go here, whether you're going to go with an all transfer unit, whether you're going to go with a bunch of veterans, whether it's going to be a mix of both, whether you're going to get a lot of freshmen involved. I expect there to be plenty of rotation too. Like, I don't know that you're going to see the same 4 starters every week. And even if you do, I don't think that any of these guys are going to be playing 80, 90% of those snaps. I think you're going to see a lot of guys that get rotated in to figure out what's going to go on with this program. Now, with that being said, I do think if there's one guy who's going to get significant playing time, it's Deshaun Mallory. He's a graduate transfer. He is the most experienced player on the defensive line. There's one guy I feel confident about playing the vast majority of the snaps. It's definitely Deshaun Mallory. But look for the veterans, Michael Matus and Anthony Cooper and BJ Green, to help get the guys going that are young, like Clayton Smith, like Prince Dorbaugh, Sam Benjamin, Tristan Munday, Ashley Williams. Like, there's just so many avenues here. At the linebacker spot, it feels like this is going to end up being a transfer heavy spot with Juju Mitchell and Trey Brown as seemingly the starters here, short of something crazy happening. They both have a ton of college experience. Juju recently was at Tennessee, and Trey was recently at Washington State, which of course is where defensive coordinator Brian Ward comes from. So feels like they're the plug and play players here, but we can't overlook the veterans that are returning with James Ajonkam and Will Schaefer. These are players that have worked very hard to get to the place that they're at. And I'm telling you right now, they're not just going to roll over and allow some newcomers to take their spots. They're going to be battling it out with Juju Mitchell and Trey Brown every single day. Every single rep is going to mean everything to these guys. It's not going to come easy for them. It's not just Mitchell and Brown's jobs guaranteed. Feels like it because, again, they're the veteran transfers, but they're not guaranteed anything. That's what I want to emphasize here. None of these guys on the defense, with very, very, very few exceptions, if any, are not guaranteed time. Linebacker is going to be an ongoing battle. You also can't forget about incoming freshman Kavion Thunderbird. You got transfers Tate Romney, Crew Jackson, Caleb McCullough returns to the program as well. There's tons of linebackers here. You can anticipate the starters to be the transfers, sure. But I implore you to not overlook the guys that are going to be pushing behind them. And then you get to the secondary. And it feels like it's Torrence as a lock for a corner spot. Jordan Clark is a lock for some place in the secondary, whether it's outside, inside, or at safety. After that, it feels like a lot of people have all sorts of different opinions. I, of course, am a very big Chris Edmonds guy. I feel like he's a starter, but I know that Shamari Simmons and Xavier Alford and the freshman superstar Montana Warren are going to push Edmonds. Edmonds is not guaranteed to be a full-time starter for the team because there is just so much that's going on with the secondary. But then you look for a corner spot opposite Torrence. You've got Jordan Clark possibly, who could be outside. He's definitely a better fit inside. Same with D Ford, who's transferring in from Austin Peay. He could potentially be another slot guy if they want to do something else with Jordan Clark. But the guy across from Torrence, you got Mason Williams, you got Isaiah Johnson, Gene Boyd III. You've got Roman Rashada is transferring in from Ole Miss. He's the brother to Jaden. You got Keith Abney and Keontae Bradley are coming in as freshmen. There's Lennox Lawson. There's RJ Reagan. There's so many different guys who bring so many different possibilities to the team. Like, you could field your best defensive backfield, and it might just be a bunch of smaller guys. Like, if if you have Jordan Clark and D Ford on the field, yeah, you're not exactly having the biggest guys on the field, but you might have your best defenders. And of course, Ed Woods is there too. And Ed Woods was a starter in the second half of the season for the Sun Devils, played very well. But again, there shouldn't be any loyalties to any guys here, with very few exceptions. And to me, the exceptions here are Deshaun Mallory, Roe Torrence, Jordan Clark, and that's probably it for starters. But as far as like playtime goes, BJ Green, Michael Matus, Chris Edmonds also in that realm. But as far as like week to week starters, to me, it's Mallory, it's Torrance, it's Clark. Those are the guaranteed guys. Everybody else is going to have to fight for a spot. And all this competition should be a classic like iron sharpens iron kind of thing. I really hope that's the scenario that we end up in, because with so many different possibilities under a new coaching staff, we might be looking at a defense that doesn't have any returning starters from last year, that doesn't have anybody in the starting lineup that we're familiar with. It could be nothing but new faces, whether it's guys who were buried on the depth chart last year, whether it's incoming freshmen, whether it's transfers. We're not guaranteed to be seeing familiar faces. And that's a really good thing, but it's also something that can be very, very scary. That'll be just an overall encompassing storyline for the defense. But breaking it down position by position, of course, there's very few guys that are put it in stone, etch it in whatever, as far as full-time starters are. There's a lot of storylines to watch here, guys. We didn't even get that into detail with the coaches. But seeing how Kenny Dillingham handles his first training camp, how these kids handle practice 2 hours a day, basically every day in 90 to 100 degree weather, we're going to find out a lot about this team. And I'm really looking forward to it. And I hope you guys are too. Thank you all for tuning in. I love each and every one of you so much. And I appreciate this platform that you've given me to talk about Arizona State University and their athletic programs. Football's around the corner, guys. We're a month away from Sun Devils football. But before we get that far, we got to go through training camp and figure out who's going to start. So if you want to stay in touch with all of that, hit that subscribe button and follow along with the podcast. You can find me on Twitter/X at Richie Brads36, the podcast at LO_Sun Devils. Again, turn on those notifications for the podcast. We're back to 5 days a week. We're back to a set schedule for the podcast. I will be seeing you guys every day, every week at a correct time. No more fluctuating schedules. We'll be back at 3 a.m. Mountain Time every day. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. I'm so looking forward to covering the team with you guys this year. Stay tuned. Until then, you keep it locked right here on Locked On.